What is going on, and welcome to another episode of the Time Killers podcast. My name is Neil Rivera, and I'm once again killing time with Mr. Matthew Field. What's going on, Matt?
Happy to be here.
And joining us once again, friend of the show, Mr. Bruce Burhans. What's going on, Bruce?
Hey, what's good? Happy to be back.
We're glad you're back to talk all things Resident Evil Requiem with us. It's been a while since this game's been out. A lot of people have played it and enjoyed it. Matthew and Bruce have played through it or have played through most of it, and they're going to give their thoughts. I'm going to MC that discussion. Back half of the show, we are going to talk about the latest obsession, Pokémon Pokopia. I've been playing that. Bruce has also been playing it as well. Before we jump into that, guys, we want to remind you, be part of the show. Go to timekillerspod.com/AMA. Give us all of your questions, comments, hot takes, anything else that you can think of as far as games and gaming news. We want to hear it, and we want you guys to be part of the show. But with that out of the way, guys, Resident Evil Requiem. It's been a long time coming here, right? It's like a quick, I feel like it's kind of well tread history at this point, but obviously Resident Evil had this massive hit with 4, went on to have a commercial hit in 5, Resident Evil 5, of course. 6 came out, was kind of a hot mess, didn't really do well critically or commercially, and then came the reboot. So you've got 7, Biohazard, 8, which just came out, Village, then a collection of remakes, 2, 3, and 4 remake, and that has all led us to Requiem, which is sort of the culmination of this sort of shared journey that these games has been on. It's been really interesting and wild to see, as someone who, like, Resident Evil 4 was my first Resident Evil game, so to see sort of everything that has come after that, and to sort of like come back to, for me personally, where it kind of all started with Leon Kennedy, has been really cool and exciting to see. Like, obviously everyone fangirling and fanboying over him. Bruce, I want to start with you. I'm assuming you've beaten through it. I should have asked you this before we started recording. Have you beaten Requiem?
Yeah, I've actually played through it all the way through once, and then a little bit through another time. I've been kind of trying out some of the different modes.
All right, well, talk me through your thoughts. Resident Evil Requiem. Just top level. How you sitting with it?
So it's definitely going to land, now that it's had a little bit of time to digest. No pun intended there, but it's going to be top 3 for me Resident Evil games of all time. My personal exposure and experience with this franchise is starting with the original game on the PlayStation 1 and having that original core trilogy, getting really hyped up and having my mind blown at the graphics of Code Veronica way back when. And then, honestly, a big decision for having a GameCube at that time was honestly the fact that Resident Evil 4 was an exclusive at that time, alongside the first remake. And it's been a long time coming. I want to say this is definitely like their... This feels like a Metal Gear Solid 4 moment, right?
I was gonna say, like, you've been there like from the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, and it's cool because I don't think that necessarily even really applies to players that have been there at the beginning originally in the way that I have. I think that this also perfectly seals off a makeshift trilogy that Capcom, whether intentionally or unintentionally, did with the remakes. If you are a newer Resident Evil fan and all you played is 2 remake and 4 remake, I mean, this is the perfect end cap to that little mini trilogy, because this is all Leon's story, right? Even if you haven't played Resident Evil 6, this, and I've said this, I like Resident Evil 6, but it's not a perfect game, and I feel like this is almost an apology to that in some ways. This feels like what they wanted to do with Resident Evil 6. I really, really enjoyed this game, and currently it's my game of the year.
It's kind of hard not to, feel sort of like the FOMO of it. Like, I fully intend to come around to it and play it. And I've been, obviously someone who's enjoyed Resident Evil games here and there, and I've really enjoyed the new trilogy. I think that's sort of what's brought me back to it. But then, yeah, I mean, like the really, like, I mean, yeah, and like I want to get your thoughts on the dual protagonist setup, but I want to pitch it to Matthew really quickly. Matthew, what are you thinking so far of your time with it? And then if you want to go ahead and mention how you feel about the dual protagonist, we can go from there.
Yeah, I think so. I'm definitely a bit cooler on this game. I So my history with the series, and I think I've mentioned this on a previous episode, but my first Resident Evil games were actually the Outbreak games on PS2, and then jumped into the mainline series with 4, and have played all the mainline series since then. So it's a bit fitting that this actually does have a small, subtle tie-in to those Outbreak games, with the new protagonist, Grace, being the daughter of one of the playable characters. Yeah, I think, and we can get into the kind of nitty gritty of some of the decisions that I am not finding myself super in line with here. But at a high level, I think this this goes for the nostalgia play, like, pretty explicitly, and they haven't made that a secret of that. And I think how you feel about that, whether you have any nostalgia at all, or B, want your nostalgia to be played on like that with a new entry in the series, will really reflect how you feel about this game. So for me personally, I don't have a nostalgia for, like, Resident Evil 2. I do have nostalgia for Resident Evil 4, but I don't think this hits, while it brings back Leon. I don't think it doesn't have the sauce that Resident Evil 4 did. Just in terms of, like, the atmosphere, the progression, the way that you feel like you're in really like you're out alone in the middle of enemy territory, kind of things. The things that really struck me with Resident Evil 4, I don't find myself feeling here. That's not to say that I'm not enjoying it at all. I'm about 12 hours in. I think I'm maybe 75% of the way through, looking at the chapter list. So I still have some ways to go. But yeah, I'm a bit more mixed on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good sort of like segue into the dual protagonist, because you mentioned that RE4 having that feeling of isolation, and that really doesn't seem to be the case here. Obviously you've got the two playable protagonists with Grace and with Leon. So, I mean, Bruce, let me start with you. Like, how do you feel about that approach? How are you playing it? Are you playing it like the default field of view, with Grace being first person, Leon being third? Have you played around with that? And then how do you feel about, I guess, just how does, like, its impact on the gameplay and just the scares overall?
Yeah, I think that it might be a hot take, but I actually was not a giant fan of that. There's certain
Really?
parts and moments that I really appreciated with it. It does some really great things once you look a little bit more into it. Um, certain areas, if you're Grace, if you don't kill anybody, then changes up things for Leon. But alternatively, if you kind of go Rambo with her, I've noticed that it can kind of almost hinder Leon segments a little bit. And even with the first person, the third person, I kind of messed around both of those. I wanted to make sure that um, I really think what Capcom suggested with having Grace be first person and Leon be third was the right idea. It definitely feels a lot scarier as Grace. It's a lot more claustrophobic. You definitely get that resource starved, like, survival horror aspect. But honestly, I ended up playing through most of the game in third person for her. I
Okay.
really enjoyed that. I think that it almost felt like you were missing out on some aspect of the character. They have all of these animations specially designed for third person that you'll never get to see unless you have that setting on. And that unfortunately clicked with me in a way to where I wanted to see that. I wanted to see her reaction of being scared. I didn't necessarily want it to be myself going through this, kind of like how they set it up with Ethan in the previous games,
Yeah.
where he was almost so boring to be essentially just the person playing, right? He's that avatar kind of experience.
Yeah.
But I felt like Grace was a well-defined character, mostly brought to life of how good the voice actor was. But it definitely kind of had its issues with me personally. I felt like there was a fatigue where the moment I felt like I was really getting into the flow with her, we would just immediately switch to Leon. Which granted, you would feel a lot of tension be released, but there was definitely something to be said about maybe going to a Resident Evil 2 approach with it. Having that, dual campaign would have been interesting. But I respect that it's clearly designed in this way, and it has a lot of interplay and setup. So I didn't hate it, but at certain points, I definitely kind of didn't necessarily feel like it was the best choice. But at the end of the day, it's just a personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah,
glad that
I
you.
would-
Yeah, you go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, I would actually, I agree with this. And I think the way they've deployed the dual protagonists here, and that it's um, different from Resident Evil 2, where it's like you can do a sort of an either or thing. They've tried to innovate a bit and have the characters both still have access to the same zones, but weave it into the narrative that they're moving, that they're kind of swapping off in terms of like what's happening in the story. I don't think it. I respect the attempt here, but I also don't really think that it works that well. For one thing, from like a narrative perspective, some of the reasons that they get that they kind of shoehorn in for you to be switching back and forth and not having the characters right next to each other, but both going through the same zone at different times, really felt just like that, like it was shoehorned in. So yeah, I kind of think that they tried something new here. I don't know that it really worked. Clearly, they wanted to have a difference in terms of play styles, which they definitely achieve. But in terms of having the characters, like the points at which you switch off and the like the impacts of one character being felt on the other, I don't know that that's super successful in my book.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
I really think that with Resident Evil 2, the way that it was presented was, depending on who you played first, it did impact certain story beats, and some people don't even realize, what they might have missed out on all those years ago, right? And with this one, I almost wish that was brought back simply because, yeah, it's so strange because there's a lot of things that either will change or have the opportunity to be different this time around. But I know for a fact that if I was able to have it in that more traditional sense where it is just Grace's campaign and then just Leon's campaign, especially with how different they play, which that they 100% succeeded in. I think that this is the best action Resident Evil's ever have. I think this is the best survival horror they've ever had as far as those gameplay styles of it being Grace and Leon. But man, I would have beat the game a lot more times if it was just in those split segments where I can just go through them with that mentality instead of being randomly shaken away from one character.
So yeah, that was kind of be my next question. Is it's really just ultimately down to how the campaign is paced, where it's like, okay, now we're gonna go over to Leon for this section. Now we're gonna transition back to Grace. What's the split like there? Is it like predominantly Grace with like hints of Leon for like the stress relief, or is it closer to 50-50?
Bruce, maybe you should take this. I have not actually seen the very end of the game yet, so I can't speak to that.
That's tricky because I think personally it's going to dive down into how you play these games. So there are, they did a fantastic job replicating what I think was incorporating the Resident Evil 1, like that original core trilogy, they really did a great job bringing that modernized. So Grace's campaign really felt like a Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 style, just through the POV and the viewpoint, the modernization of like through 7 and 8, right? Because you had all of those puzzles, you had all of those secret items that you could find, and you really had to go out of your way to do some of them. Some of them I probably would have never found if I didn't go back with a guide another round through.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, honestly, some really game-changing things can be found just by secrets in Grace's segments that really impact how easy or how quick you can get through some of these. And bringing back a similar concept that's been done a few times before, but like the blister heads of where if you kill an enemy as Grace and then you kind of come around a few times back in that area, they can come back up and they'll just be stronger and more tankier and faster. Really giving me that old RE remake vibe, where you don't want to actually kill everything in front of you. And it is more so focusing on just the overall puzzle with her. And because of that, once you kind of get a sense of where things start to connect, I was flowing through her segments. Once the initial scare kind of let go in her first area, she has some incredible monster designs. I just like from an overall standpoint of the zombies. Wow. I was obviously really excited when this virus was, the T virus being brought back and everything, but the actual creatures, making them have personalities, brilliant idea. Having, everyone on the internet's obsessed with like the scene zombies and everything, right? It's so cool to see that, and the girl, like those creature designs are just incredible. But just like how any video game is, right? Once you've already seen that initial jump scare and you've already kind of ran around them a few times, you're going to start to just understand how it plays. And then I was finishing her segments off pretty fast, just kind of dodging everything and just sprinting by. And so that's why it was very strange jumping into Leon. And I feel like, if anything, I took more time as Leon. But it's going to be up to the player based on how they play. If you want to find all the secrets, I mean, they're there for both characters, right? I mean, you have the Easter eggs and the cameos. You have the ability to gain points up. You can redeem it for stuff, charms. It's the full Resident Evil experience as you come to expect. It's not honestly dry or anything. It still has a lot of content minus a mercenaries mode, but
right. Yeah, no, I feel like that's how I would approach it as well, where it's like okay, let's get through the gray sections as quickly as possible, because of I'm going to try my best to do it to keep it in the first person perspective, but just those being like kind of inherently more scary will lend themselves, I think, to me wanting to push through them quicker versus Leon, the feeling of being empowered. Like, I'm going to feel compelled to, let me go explore and check things out.
Right.
And spread myself a little bit more thin.
Plus, you just want to spend time with Leon, right?
Like, I mean, who doesn't, right?
They absolutely nailed his like one-liners and just his personality and demeanor at this age. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect segue into, we've kind of danced around like the topic of fan service overall. Matthew, I know you weren't as hot on it. So what's what's not working for you?
I don't know about when you think of fan service, I mean, like, I guess the stuff with Leon's character and his personality does kind of work for me because, I mean, Leon is just like such an inherently likable character. He seems to really be like the embodiment of what Resident Evil is as a franchise, and that he's a little bit cheesy but also kind of awesome, and is just there to get the job done, but he's very suave and cool while doing it. It's sort of everything that you, at least that I kind of associate with what Resident Evil as a franchise aspires to be, I mean,
even beyond that, he's like the prototypical like Capcom protagonist too, right? Like, I think of like Dante and Leon and like, like these gray-haired dudes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's iconic, like truly. So I yes, I do like playing as him, and for what it's worth, I don't mind Grace as a character either. I mean, I think I guess like I said, the split in terms of the way the characters' personalities and strengths are different. The way that meshes with the design of each of their segments, I think does work. I just think that maybe in when you put the two of them together is when you start like into the same game, is where you start to see that the scenes. I mean, if you zoom out a little bit, I think um, my main my main like my main issue that I keep coming back to is that if you rewind to the last two real entries in the series, like Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 8, Resident Evil 7 was like a massive reinvention of the series that really felt like it pushed it forward. You know, like it it branched almost not. I mean, it was the same genre, but it felt something totally different. And I feel like to a lesser extent, even Resident Evil 8 was still attempting new things, with some of the way that they the way they split it up and had different things going on with different of the, I forget what they called them, like barons or
The sisters, yeah, or no, yeah, not even beyond that, like the different sort of like, yeah, I know what you mean, like the different like heads of state, so to speak, in this area.
yeah, and so the fact that there was like four of them or whatever, it gave them room to be a little bit more experimental with the way that each one of them played. They would have like an idea, like a core idea that each one of them embodied, and then you'd have a few hours with each one to kind of see that idea through. And that worked. Like that felt like something new to me too. So I think my disappointment with the structure here is that they've split this up, and each half of it is perfectly competent in the way that it plays, but they're not pushing it forward in the same way that 7 and 8 attempted to do. Or even like,
Yeah.
some of the older ones, like 4, like, 4 obviously pushed the series forward as well. I think that like, you have Grace's segments, which are pretty similar to like just what like the Resident Evil 7 style was, mixed with the Resident Evil 2 kind of, you're in a big mansion or whatever, and there's lots of locked doors, and you're going to be backtracking a lot to like unlock things. Like that's, and I know some Resident Evil fans, that's all they want out of a Resident Evil game is that kind of interaction. So, maybe this is, and that's what it comes down to, is there's a lot of different Resident Evil fans here, and they felt the need to try to please all of them in a little bit in small ways, rather than really going to say like, okay, well, we know you like these other ones. We're gonna keep trying something new, and maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't, but we're gonna just continue to innovate. It feels like they press pause on that in order to kind of capitalize on some of the momentum that the remakes have gotten them, which I can't really blame them for that financially. I mean, I'm sure this is gonna end up being extremely lucrative for them, but it does make me wish that they had gone a little bit bolder in terms of what they were trying to do, rather than, like you say, like do the fan service route to kind of appease the people who are just want more of what the older games were.
Yeah. Yeah, I come back to the what Bruce, you said about it being like your Metal Gear Solid 4. Do you think like, someone who, like me, who my entry point was 4, and I played the 2 remake, but I don't really have that close personal connection. Like, do you think someone can still play it and come away from it thinking of it as highly as you do, or does that nostalgia and like the affinity for the series really play into that?
I really think that the game is brilliant all the way through. I think that what they set out to do was very, very focused and definitely not as expansive as previous games. 100%, it does not do nearly as many different things as Village does. That is a fact. They definitely reeled it in. However, as I guess one of those like older Resident Evil fans, I do get like PTSD to like Resident Evil 6 when they did try too many things. And you kind of had that mistake of them doing too many different styles of gameplay. And what's interesting is that this game actually was meant to be another giant online multiplayer game, and they actually wiped that and said, no, we got to go back to the roots kind of with it. And going back to like it being the Metal Gear Solid 4 moment for me, I think that, so for me personally, Village did not hit because I thought it did too many things. I thought that its genre of horror was trying so much variety that it almost had a lack of identity in the sense of what it was trying to do scare-wise, where it very much felt like a roller coaster, where I would have actually preferred it to do only Lady D or mostly Lady D. I guess semi-soft spoilers for that. She's not in it very long.
No, she's not.
Yeah.
I was disappointed in that as well.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where it's like, as opposed to this style of game where it is very much focused on, all right, you get a little bit of that Resident Evil 1 style, borderline Resident Evil 0 style, and then now you can kind of get that final lap per se with, and I'm going to say victory lap. For me, it definitely bordered on fan service to almost like more of a reward than a crutch. I really felt like this was the final Legacy game. I feel like this is Capcom getting the monkey off their back. I feel like they can finally move away from Umbrella leftovers, right? When you look at the amount of time that it took to get back to this moment, Resident Evil 6 came out in 2012. So for me, wanting to see that series that I remember really liking, I love 7. I played 7 in VR, and it was one of the scariest and best gameplay experiences I ever had. And I really did like 8, even though I just kind of trashed it a little bit there. But I really liked those games, and I'm happy that it brought the franchise back, and it didn't kill off the franchise, because the franchise was very close to dying at that moment. Because obviously we had the remakes in between, but man, it feels so nice to get back to the proper timeline. Resident Evil to me will always be Umbrella, those classic characters, and it was interesting to imagine a world without Umbrella, and to kind of see that a little bit. If anything, I'm more excited for the future. I think that this is almost like a passing of the torch. You know, the fact that they even remembered Outbreak was even a thing. And going through it, it really feels like with the name drops in it, I'm definitely looking more forward to whatever they do in the next game. Because if this was them testing out a gameplay style and they still nailed it, and the RE engine is also phenomenal, by the way. This is definitely one of the prettiest games I've ever played. Playing on base PS5, and it still was like upscaled 4K. Like it looked fantastic.
I mean, at this point, RE Engine's got to be responsible for like 5 out of the 7 prettiest games that I've ever seen. It's
really great. But
it's not Unreal. It's RE Engine.
Yeah, it's I really think that will someone who does not have that same amount of nostalgia, will it hit for them? No, I'm sure there's going to be something missing. I'm sure if you haven't had that same connection with 2 or 2 Remake, and if you've only played 4, or if you didn't play either of them, I think that the game still stands on its own legs. It is a good game, but it definitely surpasses into that upper echelon for me, because it does give me all the things that I wanted from the core trilogy, of it being really slow and filled with puzzles, while also still maintaining that action hero environment where, Leon's doing backflips and saying one-liners. It definitely gave me both of what I was looking for.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say that if you have not played at least one of either Resident Evil 2 or 4, you should not play this game.
Yes.
Because you either already know this isn't for you, or you should play one of those first, at least one, preferably both, and you will get just inherently more out of this, like as a result of that.
Yeah, I mentioned it at like the very beginning of the episode, and it's like I really do think this is a makeshift trilogy. I think that I think that it really should be best enjoyed by playing 2 Remake, 4 remake, and then this. I think that if you've only played 7 and 8 and you jump into this because it's just the next logical one, yeah, I think that you'll really be missing out on half of the story and all of the gameplay styles with appreciating what Leon is as a character.
I am excited to get to it because 2 remake and 4 are my 2 favorite Resident Evil games. I have played and enjoyed the recent reboots, but yeah, something about like the campiness of it. So yeah, I mean, before we go to break, I mean, I kind of want to we kind of teased and danced around a little bit, but what do you guys see next for Resident Evil? Do you think that they've kind of got a good formula here with like a new character plus like hardened like veteran? Do we want to see them branch out in other ways? Bruce, I'm gonna kick it to you first.
Yeah, I think that the next logical step would be to bring back more legacy characters. They definitely hinted at that. It really felt like we're getting back onto that main timeline and that they're kind of leading towards something big. It would not surprise me if they attempted something along the lines of a scaled down Resident Evil 6. Something that was, here are, Leon, Chris, Jill, get the big 3, right? That's how I would imagine.
Yeah.
You'd want at least some of the big 3 in there, and then some either returning characters. It would be interesting to see Grace come back possibly, but it would not surprise me to see them kind of double down into this formula. It seems as though most people really enjoyed it.
Matthew, what do you want to see from future Resident Evil games, assuming you see Requiem through to the end?
Yeah, a brief detour to say that I think, I have not finished Requiem yet, so I don't know how the story wraps up at the end. I think, but which is to say that the story that I have seen has been not, like, there just hasn't been much of it. Like, it's just not been very clear what's going on with much of anything other than some, like, proper nouns and like a few characters showing up here and there. Like, it has not built its narrative, especially like in comparison to something like Resident Evil 8, which had I feel like it had more story, like more narrative than a lot of the previous Resident Evil games did, at least as, in my book. But as to where I want to see it go next, I mean, I think I agree that they will probably, they won't stray too far from this. I mean, this is like the fastest selling game in the series. It's been extremely well regarded. I don't think, in this time of great uncertainty in the video games industry, especially in AAA, they have a winning formula here, and I feel like they're probably thinking they can at least get one more without straying too far from this formula that they've nailed here in Requiem. So I would expect something similar. I would say that I hope they don't do that. I would hope that they would be a little bit more adventurous than that. Not necessarily in terms of which characters or what story, but in terms of the way they deploy, the mechanics that Resident Evil is known for. I would like to see them stretch a bit more, like I mentioned earlier, like they seem to nod at doing in Village a little bit. I look at like the other major survival horror franchise in Silent Hill, which just kind of totally reinvented itself with Silent Hill F last year. I don't think that Resident Evil needs to go that far. I don't think they necessarily should either, but I do kind of hope that they will, keep forging forward into something new, because you can only mine the past for so long before you start getting diminishing returns. So while I won't begrudge them making another game pretty similar to this one, I do hope they keep it in mind.
That's Resident Evil Requiem, y'all. It is everywhere. It has sold over 5 million? Let me double check. 6 million, according to Capcom as of recently. It's everywhere. It's PlayStation, It's Xbox, it's PC, Nintendo Switch 2, which I hear is a really good port. I might actually check it out on that. So yeah, if you haven't played it already, it definitely seems like one worth checking out if you're a fan of Resident Evil and survival horror. So, but we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to switch gears immensely and talk about Pokemon Pokopia, which is the other game that everyone's obsessed about. Y'all hang on. We'll be right back. And we're back. All right, guys, I'm going to do the absolute worst pivot of all time and go from talking about Resident Evil Requiem and fighting for our lives in, first person, third person survival horror to surviving the horrors of post-apocalyptic life in a Pokemon world in Pokemon Pokopia. So for those of you who are living under a rock and don't know what this game is yet, this is Omega Force, the team that gave us Dragon Quest Builders, partnering with Nintendo and the Pokemon Company to give us a Pokemon spin-off that is very similar to Minecraft and Dragon Quest Builders. So you're befriending Pokemon. There's a real-time clock that you would expect in Animal Crossing, where you're logging in every day there's new items in the store, there's new Pokemon to befriend, there's just new things to do. But then on top of that, there is a full survival crafting game here, complete with what I would say are all of the systems that come with it. So I've out of the three of us, I've played the most of this game, which I didn't look to see what my clock is at right now, but I'm within the 40 to 60 hour range, probably closer to 40, 50 hours. My wife Alex has rolled credits and she's in the 60 to 70 hour range. No, 50 to 60 hour range. She's Oh, sorry. She's laughing at me saying 80 hours is what I'm hearing. So we've played quite a bit of this game. It's honestly, I don't see the end in sight. I think this is just one of if I had to give sort of my top level, bumper thoughts, is that this is kind of the survival crafting game that I've always ever wanted. Not just because of the license and the partnership here with Pokemon, but that does help, but just the way that they've, not only introduced the systems, but layer them on. It just feels so satisfying to play as someone who likes to go through these games as a solo player. It feels like a survival crafting game built for the solo player, but then still has the full breadth and, the capabilities that you would expect of one of these big open sandboxes. So I'm all that to say that I'm really enjoying my time with this game. It's like I said, it's kind of the dream come true for me. Bruce, you're also playing it. What do you think of it so far?
Yeah, so I actually think it's fantastic. In fact, as an example here, let me just say that I am not bit by the Stardew Valley bug, or the Harvest Moon bug, or the Animal Crossing bug. I have tried time and time and time again, and the most I get is 2-3 hours, and then I'm done with them. And I just kind of thought it wasn't for me. Dragon Quest Builders 2, I'm a massive fan of. I think it's great. I love Omega Force. And this game is honestly extremely similar to that.
Yeah.
And I am all about it. I think it is the perfect mix of what I want from this cozy genre. It has just enough different things and mechanics, and it's always building off of top of each other. And it's feels a lot more guided. It has goals and things that I actually want to achieve and do in this. And it's been a fantastic time so far.
Yeah, I mean, there's three sort of core pillars for me that I come back to, right? It's the Pokemon connection, right? The gotta have them all, gotta catch them all connection, right? So like that's one area that keeps me invested is, building the habitats for Pokemon, using the different furniture items, the different powers that you gain as Ditto. And then obviously befriending them, but then not only sticking with the Pokemon connection, but then there's just a lot of just nostalgia here, like they in a way that I would imagine Resident Evil Requiem does similarly. They hit on a lot of Gen 1 through Gen 3 Pokemon just nostalgia, just different audio cues in the music, different locations that you're sort of excavating and rebuilding, very much nods to locations in those original games. But then sticking with those other pillars, moving beyond Pokemon, just the Pokemon connection, the gotta catch them all connection. I do think of obviously just the survival crafting element of it. And Matthew, like you and I, we play a lot of these games, and almost always my experience with them is that they throw so much at you so quickly. And Bruce, like what you were saying is that like Pokopia does such a great job of showing you that showing you the limits of the world, or like beyond what you're sort of expecting, but not doing so in a way that feels like overwhelming. It doesn't really induce decision paralysis. I always feel like I'm chipping away at something when I log into this game, and I think that's a testament to just sort of how simple they've made all of the different systems and different crafting elements here. Like I feel like I'm not having to memorize like 1.5 million different recipes. It's more just like understanding where I need to go to get different things processed. But yeah, I mean, like there's a third thing that I was going to mention and I totally forgot, because it really does feel like this game is limitless in all of the different things that it presents to you. Yeah, no, I'm I can't say enough good things about it right now.
So one thing I do want to ask here, because I've watched my wife play, I don't know how many hours, a lot of hours of this game as well. And she mostly comes down on it about the same place that you guys do. But one complaint that I've heard from her that I haven't heard from you all is, and also speaking to my own, like like you mentioned, like we've played a good number of survival crafting games. So like one thing that I don't love about those games is that it's not always a linear progression when you want it to be a linear progression. Sometimes you're forced to go back and farm like lower materials in order to kind of like move up the skill tree, or not the skill tree, but like the what am I trying to say? Like to craft the higher level materials that you can then use to craft the other higher level materials.
You've got to go to to get to like the 4th level, you have to go back to like the 2nd level and mine materials that, to craft the items that you need, or, so on and so forth.
Yes. So part one of my question is like, do you encounter that here at all? And part 2 would be a different kind of like tedium, which is like one thing that I've heard my wife say is that like, at some point in the game, like you're getting so many Pokemon like flooding into your area and you just kind of have to keep repeating a lot of the same actions in order to keep them happy and have somewhere to live, when really you want to be going and like progressing the plot in some other area, but you're forced to like, create houses for like 15 different Pokemon that have happened to show up for you. So where do you guys land on those things?
I think this does the best job I've seen so far of giving you a golden path almost at all times. So, Professor Tangrowth, which is, just a big giant Tangrowth that is sort of like your main point of contact and your sort of main confidant, like as, throughout the whole process of like learning things, and he's the one teaching you everything. He's always like, you can always go to him and be like, hey, I don't know what I need to do, and like they'll give you like he'll kind of nudge you in the right direction. So I mean, like there's always there's always, I equate it to sort of like when No Man's Sky added on like their like, sort of main quest, quote unquote, a couple of patches in, where it's like ultimately the game is still a sandbox game, right? Like you can just spend your entire time building, houses for 15 Pokemon. I would say like if your wife is experiencing that right now, like I wouldn't say that it's mandatory. I feel like she might be forcing herself to do that. Because generally all I would have to do is like, there's building kits which sort of simplify the act of building things. So I usually use the building kits to like, okay, let's build a house, then come in the next day, the house will fit like 4 or 5 different Pokemon in, and you can just move them in, and like that sort of improves their comfort level in a way that will progress the main story without having to invest too much time into it. And then that sort of allows me to focus more on like the main path there. So yeah, I mean, I think that is one aspect of the game where, I sort of mentioned it, where like they don't shy away from showing you that there's a lot to do in this game, that there are lots of things to do. And so there are times that it does feel like when you jump in, like, okay, I've got, cause there's 5 bespoke biomes that you can go to that all have different sort of quests and progressions, things to unlock, different Pokemon to meet, of course. So, and then even within those, you have all of these different tasks that you're sort of repeating across then. So it's like you get this decision paralysis logging on of like, okay, well, over here, I know I have a house that's done, building, and so I got to go fix that, start doing this, and you start it's almost like Animal Crossing when you jump in and you have like your task list multiplied by 4 or 5, so it can feel overwhelming. But yeah, I mean, I really like, it is such an easygoing experience that like there's no wrong answer either, right? Like if there are times where I spent the entire evening just rebuilding a bridge, and that gave me as much joy. It's similar to like a Valheim, right? Where like there were nights where I just spent working on a base and just building a bridge and making sure my roof was positioned perfectly so that, all the structurally, everything was sound. But then there were times where we're out farming stuff too. And so like, there's a little bit of that here as well, where like, do you want to focus on production? Do you want to focus on cooking? Do you want to focus on, collecting all of the different furniture items and decorating your house? So there's a lot of different things that you can interact with the game in, and it doesn't necessarily force you into doing any one thing. It does. And another thing too is that there's a lot of progression. There's a lot of different, like it avoids the trap that we mentioned of like having to backtrack, in that it gives you multiple avenues to progress, where like you'll find or materials that you need to craft those like higher level quote unquote items in multiple areas. So you don't feel like, okay, well, I have to go here even though there's nothing else I have to do. You can sort of mix it up and go to different areas here and there.
Makes sense, yeah.
Bruce, is anything, I know you're still kind of early on, but is there anything that's not working for you, or is there anything that's sort of overwhelming? I know you mentioned really liking Dragon Quest Builders 2. Is there anything really like systematically that is different about this that maybe isn't hitting you the same way that one was?
There's definitely some minor changes, but it makes up for it in Pokemon.
Yeah.
sure, there might be less hack and slash combat, but then, you discover Charizard, Funny enough, I think this ironically does a post-apocalyptic nostalgia bait way better than Resident Evil. Having like the post-apocalyptic Kanto and like the story about it, and it's a genuinely extremely sad story.
Yeah.
This game is like super depressing. Don't let its like happy, cheery demeanor fool you. When you start asking any questions and talking to any Pokemon, it gets like extremely sad.
God forbid you look at like a tablet or like another piece of lore that you pick up randomly. Like, dear Lord, it is
there's
bleak.
so much lore. It's wild. But yeah, I actually did play 20 hours of Valheim and a little bit of, or actually probably a ton of the Conan the Barbarian game. And those have similar things that you had mentioned about how the backtracking and eventually you kind of get bogged down by some features. I have not had any negative experiences with this game yet. I have not had any of those kinds of encounters yet. This has actually been extremely smooth, extremely accessible. It's definitely built from the ground up to be arguably the most accessible game in that genre, where it's not overwhelming, but it also doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't. I never thought that I was being forced or handhelded or coddled through any part of this game. I felt like it respected my time and it respected my intelligence as a gamer. It was immediately just, here's how you do this. Continue to do it until we have something else to tell you that you can do.
And yeah, to piggyback off of
something else, you're good.
Yeah, like I mean, like and even like what they give you like from the base isn't necessarily what you finish off with in terms of like your move set, your toolkit, right? And so even like the beginning, it seems mundane, but it's not, outside of the realm of what you're doing in other cozy games, but just the upgrade path and just like the game is constantly surprising you, constantly delighting you, like constantly just like, oh hey, like, I bet you're tired of doing this activity. Well, what if we made this activity easier, and so like just the way that they're constantly like layer those things on, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, but like the more you push through and see those things through the main story, the more I come away from this thinking like, yeah, like this is a game that I could spend hundreds and hundreds of hours in.
Yeah, and something that, comparing it to the other big names in the genre right now, which is Stardew and Animal Crossing, right? So with Stardew, there's only so much you can kind of get excited with some of the crops, Eventually you just have to work on the locations, making it look the best that you can aesthetically. And then after that, I guess it's just figuring out the romance part, right? That's the next big driver, at least for when I've played those. And with Animal Crossing, it's the collectathon aspect of it, right? You got to help finish however many bugs there are, like that kind of mechanic, right? But those did not really hook me in a way that they are done in this game. And granted, some of it is the Pokemon aspect, right? Of like seeing Bulbasaur and getting excited. But then the other part of it is they made all of the characters have dialogue.
Yeah.
So, when you would see, oh, okay, cool, I built a little patch of grass, in Stardew, you're just kind of done until you harvest it. But here it's, all right, no, I want to make sure that this looks great. I want to make sure this waterfall looks good, because what if I get a Pokemon in there?
Yeah.
And then the moment you do get that Pokemon, it is that dialogue-ridden experience of the way that the translation and the localization was handled with this is fantastic.
Yeah.
I think everyone's seen some of the memes of Bulbasaur walking around saying, let's get this place humid. Like, they all have such charm and personality.
It's like they got Lin-Manuel to write like half the Lin-Manuel Miranda to write half the Pokemon's dialogue, because just the sheer amount of times I see the word yo in dialogue is phenomenal. But like they give them so really much great personality.
Yeah, and I guess soft spoilers, there's no evolution in the sense of you don't have to worry about having a personality type leave. So if you really like the way that Bulbasaur acts, you don't have to worry about never seeing Bulbasaur again if you want to get an Ivysaur or Venusaur, which is a nice touch. And just the way that they handled it just felt really great. And Um, I gotta give shout out to Dragon Quest Builders too, because it is so much of the same game, but it's handled so well, and yeah, that lore just really keeps you going, wanting to know what happens next, and then like, eventually stumbling into, oh hey, I know this town from either. Granted, a lot of it looks like it's the Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu games, as far as some of the design goes. But having just played the Leaf Green port that was put on the Switch, and then also jumping into this and just knowing Kanto so well, seeing some of these routes and seeing some of these locations that I really, really remember and have like fond memories of is super cool to see. And then the cool back to back of, all right, I'm getting lore with this location. And then once you kind of clean it up a little bit, boom, now there's a Pokemon, and now this whole Pokemon has a big personality. And so eventually gets to the point where some of the Pokemon are even beefing with each other. It's really great the way that they build all of these systems on top of each other. Nothing ever feels separate, and I think that's the biggest reason why I feel like it respects my time so much. Because even if I do just one thing, that trickles down into 2 or 3 other gameplay mechanics that really make that small thing I did feel way bigger, even if I am just logging on for like an hour or less.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the store challenges, all of those like little mini progression systems make it to where like, yeah, every stick that you pick up feels consequential. And then, yeah, I mean, by the time that you're kind of ready to go out there and build untethered, so to speak, you have all of these materials built up. Yeah, no, I mean, I can't say enough great things about this game. I mean, it seems like they have a hit on their hand. It is, already the fastest selling Pokemon spin-off game of all time. It is the highest rated Pokemon game ever, which sounds crazy when we say that, but yeah, it's hard not to come away from this feeling glowing, but like it really just checks all of the boxes for all of the, like, it's the most accessible, the most polished, and the most premium feeling one of these sort of like survival crafting games that I've played like right out the gate. Like a lot of these, like you're used to, the slow build with early access and, like slowly adding content and expansions over time. And like this is, it's a $70 package, but it is full, complete, like you have, hundreds of hours of stuff to do and things to build, materials. I mean, like all of the things that I think anyone would, the creative builder kind of person that I would would ask for, the Pokemon super fan, there's a lot there. And then the people who are really into Animal Crossing, even, because going back to like the dialogue and the personalities, a lot of that stuff I would argue is done better than games like Animal Crossing, where like I think New Horizons got a little bit of flack for the personalities seeming a little bit copy paste there, where like that definitely is not the case here. And there's a lot more personality types and a lot more
there's a lot
strength.
of Pokemon too. There's a lot more Pokemon that I was expecting. I was expecting maybe around 150 to 200. There is a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably like 3 separate 100-hour games here between, if you want to play it just strictly as I'm going to build habitats and collect, all of the different Pokemon that I can, versus, okay, I'm going to play this as a Minecraft and just, build, different designs, things that I want to build, or just building it as like a slice of life Animal Crossing. Like there's so many different ways that you can play this game, and each one of those ways, each one of those permutations, there's hundreds, dozens, if not hundreds of hours of content.
Yeah. And I do want to give a shout out to the fact that all of that is effortlessly intertwined, because I think of games like Fantasy Life and like Rune Factory, where it is these different games where you could play it as a hack and slash, or you could play it like Minecraft, or you could play it like a dating sim. But they're just so different and split to where you have to have that shift in, okay, I'm going to focus on this playthrough. I'm going to focus on this, this 1 3-hour session I'm going to sit down and play it with. While with this game, it is just perfectly intertwined. I know that some people make the comparison with like Tetris being the perfect video game from a pure gameplay component. And this is really giving me the vibe of it 100% nails what it wants to do in such a ridiculous fashion that, like I mentioned before, I did not like some of those other games in the genre, but this one, just for whatever reason, it has just all the bells and whistles. It's just perfectly smooth. I've encountered no issues, and we haven't even talked about multiplayer yet.
Dude,
I don't know if that's something that you've tried yet.
We
but I have
have.
not gotten around to it, but it's incredible. There's a cloud island. That whole server platform hosting system sounds so expensive for Nintendo, yet they're doing it for free.
Yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, I mean, it's, just to touch on it a little bit, I mean, like we are a 3 Switch household. We have 2 Switch 2s and a Switch 1 that get used pretty often by my wife and daughter and I. And so, like, I was particularly interested in the fact that they're really hyping up the game share for this, and it works. Like, it's, in true Nintendo fashion, there are limitations. There's guardrails. Like, you can't, like, I think people expecting to hop in and play co-op through the sort of main campaign are going to be disappointed. But if you want to jump in and build a town together, like, that stuff works really, really well. There's multiple bespoke ways for you to kind of have your own dedicated island. You have like this sort of 5th biome, so to speak, on like your local save, and then, like you said, the cloud system as well, where you can just sort of build whatever you want with people. So yeah, I mean, the game sharing works really well. Playing together with someone who is game sharing, like, all of that works well on the Switch 1. From the Switch 2 perspective, it works really well. The multiplayer stuff on the Switch 2 is fine. Like, you kind of, anytime you do multiplayer, you do run into sort of the same kind of Animal Crossing limitations where, like, oh, like, I'm visiting my wife's island. I can't, like, now suddenly she can't take anything out of her inventory, things like that. But, I think in those, like, designated areas where it's meant for co-op building, that's not that won't be an issue.
So we've gone this far. None of us have talked about how freaky the Ditto is. This guy gives me, like, the way he can, like, morph his body reminds me of, like, the T-1000 from Terminator, and his, like, dead eyes, like, chill me to my core. I don't know. Like, between the Ditto's design and the like literal post-apocalyptic nature of the setting, I actually had to check to see what this game was rated. Like, then they just rated it E. Like, and no comments on, like, themes or anything else. And yeah. I don't know if it's just like something that is going to go over like a lot of young kids' heads who are playing this or whatever. Oh. But I found some of this stuff, like, legitimately a little unsettling.
I really liked how Pokemon, like Red and Blue and Yellow and, like, all of those original, like, Gen 1 and Gen 2, even in the original anime, like the Indigo League, I think a lot of people forget just how, like, weird and dark and like almost twisted at a lot of times Pokemon really was. And I don't want to say, like, smooth, like, glossed over it or anything.
Yeah. It's more polished now.
Because, like, yeah, it's more like, it feels wrong to say, like, Disney-fied, but it definitely is like a Mickey Mouse kind of situation, where it is a lot more polished and a lot more pristine in its presentation. I think the last time we got, like, really creepy, weird codex or, like, Pokedex entries were Gen 4. But I appreciate this game went back to kind of the roots with, like, Pokemon being weird and dark and creepy and, like, just not okay sometimes. Like, so much of them are sad. Like, so many of the iconic moments are, like, depressing. Like Cubone just being like, yeah, it's just a normal Pokemon, but the moment it puts on the skull of its dead mother, then it becomes Cubone. It's like, whoa, wait, what?
Never mind the fact that the habitat you have to build to get Cubone to show up is its dead mother's grave. And then, like I saw clips. I didn't see this in my own game, but I saw clips of, other people when they brought their, Cubone to their world. Cubone hugs the gravestone. Like, it gets dark, man. Subtly dark.
The Ditto being like, because I also am like, man, Ditto is a disturbing concept. I hate the concept of Ditto. But seeing like in the intro, it being explained that like, Ditto is not just like your creative character. Ditto is in canon creating itself to look like your trainer who's gone. It's like the last memory it remembers is the trainer it had, and so it turns into the trainer. And I'm like, man, that's so like, it tugs at your heartstrings. Like it is just a weird, strange little game. And I think it has a lot of personality and quirks with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's I don't know what else to say about it other than I'm glad it exists. I mean, this is a game that like I wish I could go back and find the old tweet, RIP my Twitter account, but like this was a game mashup that I was rooting for a long time, where I was like, this just feels like a no-brainer. Like, just give me an Animal Crossing, but instead of the animal, neighbors being animals, just make them Pokemon. And this not only delivered that, but also like 2 or 3 times the game that I would have been thrilled with on top of it. I'm gonna play a whole lot of this. Personally, I've come around on Ditto. I do also have to state for the record that Ditto is the freakiest Pokemon, canonically the freakiest Pokemon. So like all of this kind of tracks. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that they took such big swings with it, and I hope that it inspires other people to allow, other dev teams to make weird, quirky things with their IP that may not seem like a fit at first glance, but, I don't know. Like, I feel like this game almost like just shouldn't exist, but the fact that, it does is a miracle. But yeah, guys, that's going to do it for our discussion about Pokemon Pokopia. And that's going to do it for our show tonight. We're glad that you guys joined us. Bruce, before we log off, where can people find you?
I am Local Alien Party. I'm on Blue Sky, and I'm hoping to get back into more content creation as the year goes on. So I'll be posting updates there.
Bruce, we appreciate you joining us. Matthew, is there anything that you want to say to the good folks before we log off?
Just keep an eye out for those zombies and Dittos wherever they may be popping up.
Keep an eye out for those Dittos because they need love too. You know what I mean? Thanks for joining us, y'all. Don't forget to follow us, subscribe to us wherever you're listening to us, whether it be on YouTube or on a podcast service. Leave us a review if you like us, if you feel so inclined. Don't forget you can be part of the show. Go to timekillerspod.com/AMA to submit your questions, your comments, your hot takes. Get them right here on the show. And until then, I love you, and we will talk to you guys and see you on the next episode.